Hi, and welcome to Peer Support for Everyone, where you can learn how to be a resource to support the mental health of all the people in your life. I'm Tim Desmond, the founder of Peer Collective, which is the home of the best peer counselors in the world.
Hi, my name is Yamoon Wang Mashar, but you can call me Moon, and I am the Director of Peer Counseling here at Peer Collective, and we are so glad to have you back.
So, the topic for today is structuring a peer support session. So, you put yourself out there to sort of be in this space of offering peer support. And so the question is like, okay, so I have this intention and I have this philosophy of like what I want to do, but now we're going to get a little bit more into the nuts and bolts of kind of like exactly how do we put it together. And so the first question that I have is really just about opening. So someone has reached out to you and they're saying they're looking for support, and and you say sure, let's, you find a time and you sit down and you talk. And how do you open?
Absolutely. So I think that any sort of first introduction is awkward when you don't know a person, and that's okay. You could sit in that. You have to be able to sit in that discomfort. But I also think that if you could start to exercise what makes you feel like it's safe to speak, what do you need in order to feel like you could express yourself in an open way? It's sometimes it's your body language. It's somebody being attentive, somebody not distracted with other things. So making sure that you're fully present, if it's in a video or if it's in a phone call. I also think that it's really important to name the confidentiality that is protecting this conversation. And so being able to say and make sure the person understands that this is not for anybody else. This is for you to be able to express yourself, and I am here for you. And I'm hoping that you will gain the trust in me to feel like you could name that, and not making it something that is so automatic, because and acknowledging sometimes you might not be the right person. You don't have to name that in the beginning, but that's you have to be able to sit in that also. And so I think that just even before, when you start to get into the practice, really investigating and meditating on what it takes for you to go up to a stranger and be able to talk about something so sensitive, and then bring that into your practice, but still be authentic to who you are and how you interact with people.
Yeah. So the nonverbal elements of being undistracted, being present. There's a lot of research that are around if someone experiences you as warm and emotionally expressive, those are huge indicators of a positive outcome. And so we don't want to be flat and removed and sort of like the what we've learned is that the idea of being a blank slate and just sort of like having this professional distance actually is negatively correlated with positive outcome. And that's true,
Yes,
that's true in peer counseling, and it's also true for professional therapists.
right.
It's if someone feels like they can't tell what you're thinking, they don't trust you.
Yeah.
And so being willing to have that warmth and authenticity and like just being transparent enough that someone can kind of get a sense of like that you're there and you're real. I think that's great. Naming the confidentiality, just like so they're not wondering about that. Like, so whatever you say is just going to be between us. Um, and then for me, the next step is, so tell me, either like, so what is it that you want to talk about? What is it that you're going through? Like specifically, how can I help you? Because for me, so much of what we're going to talk about, like the skeleton of a peer counseling session for me, of what that relationship is, it's all based in why is this person asking for help?
Mm,
Um, and because there's some living energy, there's some like real motivation that is leading them to ask for support. And everything that you do can be built on that.
yeah.
Like that, like what a peer support relationship is really based on is this question of, is this sort of like offering of like, um, I need some support, can you offer that to me?
Yes.
And you say yes, and then but then it all comes down to, why are you looking for support, and how can I support you?
Yes.
And so everything for me, this initial part is just being able to understand what that looks like. And so from my experience, sometimes we can talk about these different situations. I'm curious like how you respond to them. So sometimes someone will, we could just say they'll talk about their challenge,
Yeah.
right? They'll talk about, basically it's almost like they're just saying like, here are some messed up things. And I'm not talking about how I'm feeling about them. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not talking about like how I'm relating to them. And I'm not talking about my role or my behaviors. And I'm certainly not talking about what I want to change.
Yes.
I'm just going to tell you, here's some messed up things that are part of my life.
Yes.
So so sometimes we start with, like, somebody starts with that. And so if somebody starts with that, um, yeah, I'm just curious. Let's assume that that's kind of how we open. And I'm just sort of telling you, well, what I want support with is, I have this, this person that I'm working with, and let me just tell you all of their character flaws. And I just give you a big list.
Yeah. I think that one of the most important things that you could do within that relationship is they did not, like you named, they did not come here so that you could fix their behavior to be able to integrate better with this other person.
Mhm.
And so it's that validation that they need about the struggles that they are having,
Mhm.
and naming and how that's affecting them and why that brought them to this platform. It's really, really hard for us to, because within myself, I always want to think of like, okay, so how, if a person, I can't change a person, but look, what could I do to be able to better maneuver in this situation? That's not the time and space to be able to bring that practice in here. I think it's really, really important to build that alliance with the person who is experiencing it and has come to you to express this. And so naming, oh wow, that must be very difficult. And really and thinking about, when we think about like what lived experience is, because there it gets thrown so much and is mentioned so much within the peer support relationship. It's really truly understanding. It's being able to validate another person's human experience,
Mhm.
not by what they could change in another person, but what is being changed about them and their happiness and their sense of worth and sense of being. And so being very, very committed and being very honoring to that person's experience, I think is one of the first and most important pillars of that peer relationship.
Yeah, so because if I tell you about my coworker and everything that's wrong with them or everything that bothers me about them, right? You don't know yet what I want. I haven't told you really
Yes.
how I want to be supported. I haven't told, so because one thing that might
Right.
be happening for me is I might want, there's at least three major things that I could be wanting that are really different. One is,
Yes.
um, I just want someone to reflect to me, like to listen to me and reflect that that's hard. And that's, and it
Yeah.
might, that might be like, I'm having a hard time with this situation and I just want to feel not alone in it. That's one
Yeah.
possibility.
Yes.
Another possibility is, I really do want to know, like, what should I say to this person, or how do I set
Yeah.
boundaries with this person, or like,
Yeah.
should I leave this working situation? I might be looking for advice. And then third, I might be looking for, maybe as I'm describing the person to you, the I might be looking for something like, okay, well, I know that nobody else is bothered by this person but me.
Yeah.
And so why am I being so triggered
Yeah.
by what they do? Is there some way that I could not feel so triggered?
Yeah.
So I might be looking to make an internal change.
Yes.
So for me, there's these three possibilities of like, I'm not looking to make any kind of change. I just don't want to be alone.
Yeah.
I'm I'm looking to make an external change. I want to change my behavior, how I'm relating to someone, or I want to make an internal change of how I'm reacting
Yeah.
internally to something. And so, but if I start, I'm just sort of like telling you, like, okay, here's all the things I don't like about somebody. You don't know that yet.
Hmm.
And so you have to kind of that. So again, so what you're starting with is just like, but that first part, this is what I loved about what you just said. The first part is clear,
Yes.
that you're not alone, and I can put myself in your shoes. That works in any situation. And for me, I like to think about that putting myself in the other person's shoes, that is always the first stage of peer
Mm.
support. And then there might be a second stage of helping somebody make a change
Yeah.
if they want to change, and if they're asking for your help to make the change.
Right.
But, and then for some people, they're not looking to make a change. They're
Hmm.
just looking to feel not alone.
And I also think that it's really important to not only acknowledge but be okay and rest in the fact that somebody might not be wanting to make a change, and fighting that urge within yourself to think that help means fixing,
Yeah.
or help means rectifying the situation. Like, just like you named, sometimes it's just about building that alliance and making somebody feel heard, and making somebody and being able to have that safe space to name what this is doing for them. And I know, so, and within our own, like within our own natural abilities of being peer counselors, or even just good people, we want to say, I want to make this situation better for you. I want to fix this situation. And it's fighting that urge and really allowing a person to lead the narrative and the situation, how they may want this to play out or not play out, and be completely okay with that.
Yeah. So, because I think what happened, so there's a few different things that happen when you're listening to someone who's in emotional distress,
Mm.
right? So first, all human beings uh, react when someone's in emotional distress.
Hmm.
You're not just like it might feel good if you're actually able to help somebody relieve their distress,
Hmm.
but just hearing about someone's distress is not easy for anybody.
Exactly.
Right? It takes energy to be able to do it. And so one thing to notice is, am I trying to fix, am I trying to go into that problem solving because I find it too uncomfortable to be with you in your moment of distress? I don't want to be, I don't want to hold your hand in a
Hmm.
difficult moment in your life, because that means I have to be touching someone who is in
Yeah.
a difficult moment. And
Yeah.
so that, if you recognize that, then what that's telling you is that you're not in a place of being able to offer support
Hmm.
in that moment. If you can't, because what at its most basic, at its most core, um, in any situation that somebody's asking for peer support, the one thing that is implicit is, be with me
Mm.
where I am.
Yeah.
And then the question now, sometimes it's not that I find it so uncomfortable to be with you that I'm gonna start to fix things, but instead it's projection.
Mm.
So what happens is, um, I put myself in your shoes to some extent, not enough to really understand your perspective, but in sort of a superficial way, put myself in your shoes and then immediately start telling you what I do.
Mm.
You didn't ask what I do yet.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so sometimes maybe you're lucky and you guessed right, and that is what they were gonna ask you. And so it's a
Yes.
good experience. But a
Yes.
lot of the time, you're guessing wrong.
Yes.
And they, like, that's not where they wanted to go, or that's not the type of help that they were looking for.
Yeah.
And it's like just slowing down a little bit and just being like, okay, so what have they asked for so far? I
Mm.
said, what do you know, I asked them what they're going through. They're telling me about something. And the only thing that I want to do right now, the reminder that I like for myself is, um, just love and accept this person right where they are.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, there'll come a point where you're kind of there's parts about like, okay, well, let me see if I'm actually understanding you.
Mm.
So let me see if I can see like, so when so I can see you're telling me about how they talk in a meeting, and I can tell that like, so when you're describing it, it sounds like it really like it annoys you,
Mm.
or it might sound like, you seem like that you're finding them kind of intimidating, or
Mm.
like I'm trying to name what is the reaction
Yes.
and put some, because I really want to put myself in their shoes as much as
Yes.
I can. So there might be questions like, okay, so when they're talking like that, is it that you're feeling annoyed, or are you feeling intimidated?
Mm.
And just like trying to get this kind of clarification of,
Yeah.
can I really put myself in your world?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And I think that like I love that you talked about not going into the guessing game or the assumption game.
Mhm.
And it's all about clearly understanding and wanting this person to feel felt, to feel validated, and to be understood in that moment. And that might be the only thing that they needed at that time. They might be just, I need somebody to understand that this is hurting me, I am aggravated, this is affecting me. And it makes me feel good to be able to have that in that person, and be able to sit and then allow the person to lead into what that solution might be, or if there's a solution to come from it.
Yeah. And the deeper question for me in that first stage of just understanding is, if I put myself in your shoes, like I know that I've done a good job putting myself in your shoes. If I can actually understand, so it's not just I hear this like you tell me your situation, and then I accept that that's how you're reacting to it.
Hmm.
It's actually that I understand why.
Yeah.
Like I can put myself in your shoes in a way that it makes sense. So like I can imagine being in that meeting, and I know that being in that meeting, I could react to this person a million different ways.
Hmm.
And I get why you're having the specific reaction that you're having. And there's a lot of insight that comes from
Hmm.
that. And so this question of, uh, so if I imagine myself in that meeting, maybe I would feel defensive. And what I hear you doing is you're sort of like in denial, or you're like, whatever it is. And
Yeah.
I want to understand, like, so what is it like? What are your thoughts when that's going through you? Like,
Yeah.
what does it feel like? Because being able to really be with someone in what they're going through, sometimes it's sort of like you're getting you're sort of putting it under a microscope almost,
Hmm.
where you're really kind of understanding the whys.
Hmm.
Why are you reacting the way that you are?
Yeah.
And also knowing that the person probably they might not be coming into the conversation knowing that.
Yes.
So you're like, oh, that's so it's interesting when you're telling me about the situation, like what's the feeling that comes up? Like,
Yeah.
is it a fear? Is it an anger? Is it a sadness?
Yeah.
And then, okay, so let me imagine. So it's a sadness when when you're hearing this. And so, yeah, what do you like, help me understand, like, what is it that makes that sad? And
Hmm.
like, that is all just what we're trying to do, is understand the person's situation, that like, what about this is painful.
Yeah.
And then the second point is, how do you wish it was different, if at all?
Hmm. Yeah.
So I'm curious, actually. So the next question that I have is, um, okay, so we've talked a little bit about how do we open. We've talked a little bit about creating this alliance, about what are you looking for, and we've talked a little bit about the danger of your own agenda and the assumption game, and that kind of stuff. Um, I guess my next question is, when is it appropriate to help somebody with problem solving, or help somebody with, like sharing your personal experience?
I think that it's really, really important to be empathetic and not sympathetic. It's where this person is really get to the point where they have built a full understanding and feel completely confident that you're completely in alliance with their experience.
Mm.
You have validated it, and they know that your intentions is only to make sure that you're there to for them and not the other person, or being a mediator between them and a situation, or them and another person. And then getting into, you know, asking. I think it's really important to be able to inquire, if you could share, like if I could share a situation that I've been in for myself, and then giving them the space to say no, not yet,
Mhm.
and be completely okay with that, and sit in that, and allow them to be able to continue, to finish their story, or finishing their need for that time and that space. And then if they do, then getting into making sure that you're not representing the space of the antagonist,
Yeah.
and really being able to align your experience with that, what they were experiencing, and being able to name the emotions and the heaviness, and not showing yourself as a, like, in this savior complex of, I just didn't let it get to me. I didn't. You have to align yourself with that emotion, and being able to make them understand that the experiences that you had in that situation, or in the narrative that you're providing for them, really makes them feel like they're not alone in what they just experienced. And there's an empowerment that comes there when somebody knows, oh, okay, so I'm not overreacting. This is not just, something trivial. There's other people that deal with this and have also been affected by the actions of others, or an uncomfortable workspace, or the intimidation at a certain conversation, or with a certain character. And then start to slowly get into the pieces of what you did as a solution, not only against that person, but even for yourself.
Mm.
About, like, what actually brought you healing and what brought you strength. I think not getting, like, right into that problem solving of, and then I went up to the person and said, and named exactly what this was. But the process, and being honest about the process that you had to go through, also acknowledging that you also needed space to gain your strength. And there are places where you need to gain your strength, rather than going straight into the act of going and, addressing the situation or problem, and allowing that person to also be able to name the times and the spaces and the outlets that they could start to have in their lives, and not rushing through that, so that they could be like, oh, okay, so I also have a similar outlet that I could reach out to, and staying in that space and making sure that they have, the supports that they need. Because I think it's not very fair to just prematurely throw somebody into, something that they might not be ready for. And so making sure that if they are not ready to go through it, there's also times when you are not ready, and had to acknowledge that also, and being able to validate and honor that, and empower them even in that space of hey, if I needed the distance, I needed whatever I needed, like, I needed the time to myself, I needed the space, I needed the support of a superior, or whatever it could have been, and being able to be honest about that, and not empowering them to just go in charging, like, in the ways, and helping them. There should be a we. There shouldn't be, I did this, so you have to do this, or you, like, this is what you should do. It's being able to build that next step, or to build that process of healing, or that process of rectifying together, and making sure that they feel comfortable, if this is what you're suggesting, or sharing about what you did or went through, that they also feel comfortable with that piece, so that they also don't feel intimidated by, their lack of capacity, their lack of resource that you may not have, and acknowledging that not everybody may have had the same outlets and strengths, and resources that you did, in order to address a situation or a person.
Yeah. So the you said not playing the antagonist. I feel like that
Yes.
was like that's a really powerful thing, because we see, so you and I see so many people applying to work
Yeah.
on Peer Collective, people who
Yeah.
want to be peer counselors for Peer Collective, and obviously we have a kind of a ridiculously high bar for the people that
Yeah.
we let onto the platform. One of the things that I see, so there's this one situation that you need to kind of pass in the
Yes.
application project process, where it's someone who's talking about, I use drugs at work. My wife doesn't know about it. I don't think it's a problem. And I see so many, we see so many people trying to make an alliance with the person's wife,
Yes.
trying to make an alliance, trying to sort of like problematize.
Yeah.
Here's what I would do and why I
Yeah.
don't approve of what you're saying,
Yes.
or even this sort of like what I would consider kind of like a false alliance where they're like, yeah, okay, well, do you see any issues?
Yes.
Like where it's like this very specifically like leading question of like, I'm
Yeah.
sure that you see that this isn't healthy.
Yes.
um, so what they're doing is they're either trying to make an alliance with someone who's not in the room,
Hmm.
or they're trying to make an alliance with their version of health or morality.
Yes.
And what they're missing is this sacred relationship of there's a human being coming to you
Mm.
who's saying, I need support.
Yeah.
And I am not ready to tell you, I'm not ready to be vulnerable with you. And I'm
Yes.
not ready to, and I want to let you know that there's nothing wrong with me.
Yes.
Right. But coming into this relationship, like
Yes.
I'm coming for peer support,
Yeah.
saying to start off, there's nothing wrong with me and nothing that I need to change.
Yes.
The what we like, yeah, just being able to say like, okay, there is something that brought you here. And I
Hmm.
don't need to say it out loud, but knowing it, just remembering it.
Yeah.
There's something that brought you here, and I want to be an ally with that.
Yes.
There's some way that you want more from your life. There's some way that you want more harmony or well-being or just to be accepted, or whatever it is, or like you're worried that maybe you're out of control. And
Yeah.
that is living energy in the room, and that is what we need to be aligning ourselves with. The other piece that you brought up that I think is really important is this idea of, as a support person in somebody's life,
Yeah.
I have a finite amount of resources, right? I have a finite amount of experience in related situations. So,
Yes.
number one, as a peer counselor, you have never been in the exact same situation as any other human being.
Yes.
It's almost scary, or it's almost, well, I would say it's almost dangerous if someone's telling you about a situation that's really close to one that you've been in,
Yeah.
because you can almost forget that like actually your situation was different in some
Yes.
capacity. It's not
Yes.
exactly the same.
Yes.
So you've been in whatever situation they're in, there's some way that you can relate from your own life in your own humanity, because we
Yeah.
all know loss, we
Yes.
all know fear, we all know rage, we all know like all of these experiences. So there's some way that you can relate, and there's some strength or resource that's helped you through whatever situations that you've been in your life.
Mm.
And so, what we have to offer, from my perspective, and this is why everybody has something to offer in those moments, and
Yes.
nobody has everything to offer,
Right.
right? What we have is what's worked for us.
Yes.
And to recognize like, this may or may not click for you.
Mm.
And maybe if you're like, people like us that are sort of personal growth junkies, maybe you're
Yeah.
like, okay, well, there's might be like, I have like 6 different things that come to mind.
Yes.
That I might use in a similar situation. Let's
Right.
talk about them and see which one is
Yeah.
appealing to you.
Yeah.
But if you're not, then you're like, this is like, what I can say to you is, I've never been in your exact situation, and I don't know if what works for me is going to work for you,
Mm.
but I can share something that's been helpful in my life.
Yeah.
And then you can see if that feels like the type of thing that might help you. And if it doesn't, then I can accompany you as we look for other resources, or we can
Yeah.
just find another person
Yeah.
to whose strategies might be a better fit for you.
Yeah, I also think even within the component of pulling in your own lived experience, it's very, very important to not align yourself or be overly invested in making sure that you name the stigma or the harm of that action, or that, you can't, because it doesn't benefit the person. It doesn't, and just because there's a damaging component to your life within that pattern, within that action. The most important part is not speaking to the damage of it.
Mm,
It's really being able to validate and name how that made you feel,
mm.
and how, like, and with the emotions that you went through as a human being, and that's how you find the alliance in it. It's not in that same scenario that you're talking about, to be like, well, yeah, I used drugs too and it was horrible, my life went all the way downhill, and and just naming all the negatives of what it is. I think that a person can see it playing out in their own lives, and it's up to them, because they're the storytellers, to be able to say what in their understanding or their investments in what a wholesome life is, to name whatever the harms are, and it doesn't have to align with how you were affected by it. So I think being very careful not to align yourself with the stigma or the harm in that, and just only like go specifically to harm reduction is also very important.
Yeah. Now there's two more questions that I want to get to before
Yes.
we end. And the next one, I'm really curious what you're going to do with this. So I want to talk a little bit about the some specific things that I like to kind of share with people about when someone is looking to change an emotional or behavioral pattern in
Yeah.
their lives. So they tell you about the situation, and you spend time putting yourself in their shoes, and you get this sort of shared worldview, and you're like, okay, so I get why that's uh, painful. Let me know, how can I help you? Like, what are you looking for?
Hmm.
And the answer to, like, what are you looking for, how are, like, is there a change you're looking for, they're like, I want to react differently.
Mm.
I want to change an emotional or behavioral pattern in me,
Mm.
right? And so the thing that I feel like is at the core of how I like to teach therapists about working with this stuff, and I'm just really curious how this lands for you. So what it often starts with is, well, let's see if we can understand that pattern a
Hmm.
little better.
Yes.
And so often what we'll do, what I'll say is, um, can you picture your, let's name as clear as you can, what is the change you're trying to make?
Yeah.
And specifically, a moment that the pattern comes up. And this is like, so it's a, can you name a specific situation where that pattern comes up, but you wish it wouldn't?
Mm.
So it's like this real, it's not like a, well, maybe in this situation it was fine, but it's like very specifically, um, like last Thursday when I got home from work and this person called, and I had this, it's like a specific time when you had the reaction and you wish you hadn't.
Mm.
And then we say, okay, so picture yourself there, go back there. Let me know what it feels like right in that moment of the person's on the phone with you and they're telling you this thing that they told you, this specific situation.
Mm.
What are the feelings that come up in your body? What are the
Mm.
thoughts that you notice? And so what it comes down to is, if you're looking to understand one of these patterns, it's bringing it into the room as we're talking, right? Instead of just sort of telling me about it, it's like visualize it happening now. Visualize the trigger, and then let yourself have the reaction. And then we're going to go into slow motion. And I want you to describe to me as much as you can, what are the feelings? What are the thoughts? And then it's through that kind of experience, it's through that process of seeing something in a lot more, seeing something in a lot more detail, that we're able to understand how it might change. So if we're working with someone who is asking to make a change, if we're working with someone who's asking to make a deeper change, changing sort of a more deeply held emotional or behavioral pattern, it's this practice of, let's talk about a specific time that it comes up.
Yeah.
Visualize yourself in that moment that it comes up. Let it come up in you a little bit. And then we're going to explore it and just try to understand, like, what is going on? Like, what, like, why, like, if all of a sudden, you know, this person, my sister is telling me about something that's going on, you know, with her kid, and then I'm noticing myself feeling just like I can't sit still, it's just intolerable, then just
Yeah.
slow down. Just so feel that for a minute. Let yourself feel how intolerable that is. What makes it intolerable? Like, what are the thoughts here? Like, you know, like what, like, and then just like being able to ask those questions in a slower way. And I feel like that for me, the reason that I bring this up is because a lot of times people are, when they come to peer support, but I would say some of the time, they are looking to change some sort of deep pattern. And just like to have like a broad sense of like, what are some things that people can do to make those changes? Everybody might have for themselves what's worked, but I just like to kind of share a little bit of like a structure that I find really helpful. Yeah, so I guess I'm curious how that lands for you, how that relates to
Yeah.
support, and then yeah, and then just like,
So I think that was such a valuable tool, or just such a valuable practice, because then it really brings it back to peer support, because within the peer support model, within that relationship, we're not behavioral therapists, you know, we're not getting into this authoritative piece of just giving you the directions of how to change that situation, but we're giving you the opportunity to make it really be centered on your experience and how you're experiencing the world around you. And so when you think about, you know, having a conversation with your sister, and instead of focusing on what this other person is doing, it really helps you to go into the moment to moment pieces of how it's starting to affect the changes in your body. And then it's also acknowledging what we can't control and what we can control. And then it becomes a joint, a partnership about really helping you to experience and understand what you're going through, and in what capacity that you could start to change the small pieces within yourself. And then I'm able to come in and really validate it through that human experience, through being able to name, you know, times that I have felt that, and being able to, you know, cope or come up with tools or resources that has helped me be able to navigate through that emotion, rather than this larger, you know, conversation of just completely turning and changing a behavior. It really makes it a conversational piece. It really makes it a partnership, and being able to not only express what you're going through in the piece of how it's affecting you at large, but me and you going through and really speaking towards the humanity of it, of the times that we have felt angry and felt apprehensive, and the anxiety that has come from it, and how we have coped with.
yeah. So because like if we're just to take that example that we're talking about, so it's
Yeah.
you know, I'm telling you about my sister, you know, she's talking to me about some conflicts in her family, and then I just kind of lose it, and I'm just, you know, and
Yeah.
I have this huge reaction, and I'm like, I don't want to be that person. So you say, okay, so picture yourself back there. What is she describing to you? What is she saying
Yeah.
to you right as you're having that reaction? And then what's happening in your body? And then let's just slow down and let that feeling be there in your body for a minute.
Mm.
Don't try to make it go away right away. And let's see if we can understand. So, what is it that feels so intolerable about what she's saying, or feels so awful about what she's saying? And that's when you get the thing of like, I feel like, you know, you're gonna end up just like mom, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like that.
Yes.
That's when those moments come up, and
Yes.
that's the deep human connection that's possible.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, I get that.
Yes.
you don't want to see her start acting like your mom did, because you know how the, you know, all the pain that that created.
Yes.
Now we have another layer that
Yeah.
we can connect about.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
And so then the last question is closing.
Yes.
So let's say you have some sort of a time limited thing, like whether it's personal and you're sort of like, okay, I'm just setting aside this amount of time for you, or you have other things happening in your life. So somebody's just been opening their heart to you and just absolutely pouring everything out. How do you end? How do you close?
I think within the closing, it's being first is it's being conscientious of the time that you have, and really helping a person to be able to come to a closing thought rather than just cutting a person off, in the middle of them expressing themselves, and then even saying or naming as you're closing out. We have like and giving them the option within this. It's you can give them the option of, hey, I would love to schedule another time, and I really want to talk more about this and be there for you. And then also being able to give, like, I think being encouraging
Mm-hmm.
to each other and always leaving it in a strength-based place, and really building a sense of hope for somebody in any situation that they're going through is extremely important. How to close. It's not closing in that I'm really sorry that you're going through this, and we hope it gets better, kind of generalized understanding, but and also being able to let them know that you heard them, and being able to name specifics within the conversation so they knew that you're very present is also very important.
Yeah, and that's a skill. That's a hard skill to do. Like the
Yeah.
wrapping up is like not
Yeah.
easy. It's like when you're writing an essay and then you're supposed to have your conclusion.
Yeah.
It's like supposed to tie everything together. It
Yeah.
is it is a skill and it takes practice. And it's sort of like, okay, well, let me think back over. Yeah. So what it seems like is what we learned today is when your sister's talking with you about that what comes up is this fear about your mom.
Yeah.
And that totally makes sense to me. And I fully relate to that in a lot of ways. And then you have an intention of wanting to be able to see that, your mom and your sister are different people. And,
Yeah.
you want to, and now if you want to talk about that, more about that in the future, you can reach out to me. Yeah, there's another thing that I'll sometimes like to do a little earlier where it's like, so I'm noticing we only have this amount of time left.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you really need me to hear,
Yeah.
or anything else that you want to kind of to make sure that we talk about before
Yeah.
we close? And then that
Yes.
wrapping up, I think, is really great.
Yes.
Speaking of wrapping up,
Yeah.
I'll say so let's so you mentioned this before. So I would say for me, well, yeah. So what are your like one or two, a couple of like bullet point takeaways? So we're gonna practice that wrapping up right now.
Yes.
What are a couple of bullet points from this conversation about structuring?
I think making sure that you name that you are there for a person, making sure that you name the confidentiality, and creating and making sure that you set the precedence of making that and naming to that person that this space is safe space for them to be able to express, and you're there for them, is really, yeah, the bigger takeaways in me.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's about we're starting with the only thing that you need to do is love and accept and understand this person, and just like
Yes.
and be with them in whatever they're going through.
Yes.
And then if they're asking for help getting through it, then you can whatever or whatever you've used in your life, including some of the things that we mentioned, that can help them get through it. You can
Yes.
offer it at that point.
Awesome.
So thanks everybody
Yes.
for listening. And again, if you have any questions or comments, you can post them to us. If you can follow us on social media, and if you're looking for this kind of support in your life, you can find it at peercollective.com.
Awesome.